Hi guys, in this episode of Plummet's Thoughts On, I'm gonna be sharing my thoughts on the recent Spider-Man movie, No Way Home, which was actually my first Marvel movie that I ever actually watched myself, because before that I've only seen Marvel movies from videos on YouTube like Cinema Scenes or Cinema Wins or Pitch Meeting or just watching some reaction channels doing reactions to Marvel movies. That has been my experience with Marvel. And if you're new to my channel, I feel like I've mentioned it before, but haven't really talked about it before. But anyway, if you've been on my channel, you might know that I'm not a big fan of Marvel at all. I'm more of a DC fan. Those superheroes and the way they are usually handled is much more my kind of thing. And I'm just also much more familiar with DC characters in general, so it's just much more of my thing. But um, I do not hate Marvel per se. I don't hate the characters. Like Spider-Man is one of my favorite superheroes actually, because his take on what the character is much more similar to what DC heroes are, in my opinion at least. So I like it because of that. But I hate the MCU. I'm gonna go out and say it. I hate the MCU. But don't click on the dislike button yet, because after watching this movie, I have some changed opinions about the MCU. I'm actually a little bit more positive on the MCU now, although it also kind of solidified certain opinions that I had about the MCU before. So you should really see the whole video before clicking either the like button or the dislike. So, before we get into what my opinions, how my opinions on the MCU have changed and how they've solidified in other ways, let's just first get out of the way the movie itself. I thought it was fun. I actually really enjoyed it. The action was great, the characters were great. Maybe there was a little bit too much fan service, although I did laugh quite a lot at the "I'm something of a scientist myself" line. The second they started talking about science, I kind of expected it to happen, but it was funny, I admit, but I feel like maybe it got a little bit too fan wonky. The typical Marvel humor wasn't really my thing. But overall, it was a really fun movie, and I obviously loved seeing Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield back in the roles, because I personally like both of them more than Tom Holland. Not because I think Tom Holland is a bad actor. I actually think he's an amazing actor. But it just kind of stems from the fact that I just don't like the MCU. For many reasons that I'm going to delve into in a little bit. And MCU Spider-Man just feels less interesting compared to Andrew Garfield Spider-Man and especially Tobey Maguire Spider-Man. They just seem much more interesting. It's just the MCU brand that kind of ruins it, and the MCU way of doing things that kind of ruins Tom Holland Spider-Man for me. But he was pretty good in this. I really enjoyed him a lot. Like, the action is probably my favorite thing about this, because his fight with the Green Goblin was so brutal and so awesome, and I really, really enjoyed that one. And yeah, I also really enjoyed seeing the old villains again. But I feel like I said, the fan wonkiness maybe was a little bit too much, because outside of the Green Goblin and Doc Ock, I mean, most of them didn't really do much. So it really feels like they were just added into these movies because of fan service, you know? Which, like, fine, but I was just expecting more. It just kind of felt weird only to focus on these certain characters and not the other ones, you know? And especially the thing that confused me about the villains is why was Sandman teaming up with the villains? Because if you remember, at the end of Spider-Man 3, he kind of just went with the wind, for lack of a better term, and was supposedly kind of like a good guy-ish kind of thing. So he's not like a villain, so why the hell did he fight all the Spider-Man at the end there? I don't know. But the movie did confirm that the trailer was edited because they had definitely removed Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. And yeah, like I said, I really enjoyed seeing them, and their interactions with Tom Holland Spider-Man was so damn good. But I guess here is where my issues and me talking about why I don't like the MCU comes in. Because the dialogue in this movie, I mean, at first I thought it was garbage. Because this is just not the kind of dialogue that I personally enjoy. I don't enjoy dialogue that seems real, that sounds like people actually talking to each other. Because all the interactions between the three Peters and three Spider-Mans genuinely felt like just the actors just standing around and talking to each other, especially when they were talking about right before the big final fight. Like, especially in those scenes there, it genuinely felt with like just the actors talking about it. Like when they were talking about the organic web shooters and everything, it felt like the actors were talking because there was a lot of uhs and ums and stops and interruptions in their speech. And I personally, at least as I was watching the movie, I didn't like that. And I still don't necessarily like that kind of dialogue. I personally prefer more kinda over the top-ish and comic booky kind of way of speaking that is more meaningful, with more depth. I just enjoy that kind of stuff. And especially when you put it in the middle ground between being realistic but also being meaningful is when it's at its best for me. But when you make it like this, like how the MCU does it, where it seems genuinely like the characters just talking to each other, I mean, I don't like that. At least I didn't at first. It's actually grown on me a lot, and it definitely makes the world seem more real and more grounded in many ways. But again, I just don't like that. Like, earlier this year, I watched the Snyder Cut of the Justice League. And that is straight up my favorite superhero movie ever. Because it's exactly what I want from a superhero movie. It's an epic battle against the ultimate evil. And like, yeah, I enjoy exploring the characters on like a more human level and everything, and that is fine for Marvel. But the Marvel way is not the only way to do superheroes. And I'm tired of the DC EU getting shot on just because it's not fucking Marvel. But I'm getting a little bit sidetracked. So yeah, like I said, outside of the dialogue, which at first I didn't like, it was an enjoyable movie, and the ending was, I guess, kind of really cool because it kind of ended up meaning that the three movie of Spider-Man, MCU Spider-Man that we got, were kind of like an origin story about the MCU Spider-Man, because in this movie, Aunt May ends up dying, and she's the one who says the "with great power comes great responsibility" crap. And after that, Tom Holland Spider-Man obviously goes and beats up the Green Goblin, which kind of, I guess, matures him in a way and makes him a Spider-Man and not just an Iron Boy that he was until this point. So I'm definitely excited to see where they're going to go from this point, whether they're going to go for a more grounded take on the MCU Spidey, like something more along the lines of the original Spider-Man, or whether they're still going to keep the MCU crap, because they could go either way, honestly. The one thing that bothered me about the Venom inclusion, like, what was the point of that? Like, with the end of like the Venom Let There Be Carnage, it kind of seemed like maybe Eddie Brock was gonna play a bigger role in this movie. At least have the characters meet, even for a little bit. But no, he just literally just traveled to this dimension in the post-credit scene of Let There Be Carnage, only to travel back in the post-credit scene of this movie. Yeah, I don't know. So yeah, it was a really fun movie, maybe a little bit too fun wonky, but it's my favorite Spider-Man uh, movie out of the MCU Spider-Mans, at least at this point in time. So yeah, like I said, this has actually changed my opinion on Marvel movies a little bit. Because until this point, I thought of them as just schlocky, kind of like people, like how people have said that Marvel movies are not particularly deep. Uh, they're not super epic. They're not. They're just like kind of like roller coaster or junk food. They're entertaining and fun and a great experience to have, but you don't want to have it all the time, you know? And they're not like as memorable as an actual meal that is healthy for you, and that is more meaty, for lack of a better way to say it. But again, I've kind of realized that it doesn't have to be, you know. It's fine the way it is, and I actually even have started to have a little bit of an interest to actually uh, delve into and watch through the whole MCU. And I've contemplated and thought about maybe doing it on the channel, and doing reactions to all the different movies and everything. But I feel like this might be a little bit too big of an undertaking because of how much content there is for the MCU, and the fact that I don't really want to check everything out, especially the current bunch of shows that are happening on Disney Plus. Those, if I ever do decide to do reactions to the movies and the MCU in general, I'll probably not gonna be doing the shows. So yeah, like I said, some of my opinions about Marvel, like the fact that it's like junk food, have kind of been solidified with this movie. Because it's the first actual movie that first movie that I've actually seen myself. But I've also kind of grown more into liking the MCU, or at least not hating it as much, because it's not bad, it's just different. And if I'm expecting people to feel like that for the DC EU movies and not shit on them just because they're not Marvel, then I should stop shitting on the MCU for not being DC, you know? So yeah, overall, a great experience. I would definitely recommend this to anybody who is a Spider-Man fan. But it's not really gonna be a movie that I feel particularly I don't know, attached to. I don't think I will ever really rewatch it. At best, I'll be rewatching the interaction scenes on of the three Spider-Mans on YouTube, but that's pretty much it. And in terms of a rating for this movie, I feel like I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 10. And it's mainly because of the interactions between the three Spider-Mans, because that is such a cool idea, and I'm glad we got to see it. We might see something similar like that from the DCU soon with the Flashpoint movie, which, by the way, look at that. I bought that recently. My first ever comic book that I actually bought myself. I'm so proud of having that. And it's such a cool comic book as well. It's the Flashpoint movie comic book. And I haven't even read it myself yet. But it just looks so damn cool, dude. I love it. But yeah. I guess there's also one more flaw about the movie that I forgot to mention. That being that the ending kind of doesn't make any fucking sense when it comes to what happens to the characters from the other movies. Do they go back and die? Do they all go back to the point in time in which the Spider-Mans come from? Because Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man clearly is from like 15 years later. But if the cured Green Goblin comes back to that timeline, Harry would be dead, which doesn't feel right for the writers to be intending to do that. But if they're not doing that, are they sending all the characters to the time period that they came from? That means that there's like a bunch of different timelines now, with like the Green Goblin not dying, thus Harry not dying, and maybe even Otto Octavius not becoming Otto Octavius. So So yeah, this just creates these branch timelines, and I don't know. I would have liked a more kind of ending that ties it up better, because now it just kind of ruins what was kind of already finished in a decent way. Both franchises, like the Amazing Spider-Man and the original Spider-Man, they were maybe not, they didn't maybe end great, but at least they had an ending. And with this, it doesn't really feel like these characters end, and the music in the movie didn't really explain to us what happens to them after this, you know. But yeah, what did you guys think about this movie? Comment down below and let's have a discussion about it. And also, before we end this video, I just want to give a huge shout out to my currently 2 patrons on Patreon, Omari Bridgman and Deadpool. Thank you guys for your support. I really appreciate it. It really means a lot to me to have decided to support me, and I hope you continue to do so and continue to enjoy my content going forward. Thank you very much. And now, before we end this video, I just want to talk about something to you guys very quickly, which some of you may or may have not noticed before or know about me, that being the fact that I am trans. And yes, this may come as shocking to some of you, because I don't really flaunt it that much on my channel, or at least I feel like I don't. Outside of like my K-pop reactions, which is where I feel like the most comfortable being myself like this. And yeah, I am in fact trans. I'm not necessarily full-on male to female, but I heavily want to transition to being pretty female. I do consider myself more non-binary though, or maybe gender fluid would be the best descriptor as well, because I do have occasional moments where I feel fine being like just a normal guy, but most of the time, like right now, I do feel very dysphoric. And that's why I'm asking you guys for any help that you can give me, because my situation right now, I don't really see any way outside of you guys' help. Because, and this is gonna be kept short and concise, I live with my parents. They're never going to accept me as a trans person. They just never will. And as a matter of fact, back when I started the YouTube channel, I was actually kind of slightly starting my transition back then, with like starting to grow out my hair. I even got to DIY HRT, but because my parents started noticing certain things, like my behavior had changed a lot and my clothes had changed a lot, I kind of had to stop doing that, because they were constantly nagging me about cutting my hair, and just started to kind of be threatening in a certain way, and felt like they were ashamed of me and everything. And that just kind of stress just tired me out to the point where I just gave up. But as dysphoria goes, it just doesn't go away, you know. I still feel like this, and in fact it's somewhat been intensifying again recently, so I just wanted to share this with you guys. And again, I would really appreciate any amount of support you can give me in regards to this, because I just don't see any way out of this. Because even if I moved out of my parents' house and got myself a job and everything, that's just not gonna work for long-term planning, because once I transition, it's like I probably will not be able to get myself a job, because my country is very transphobic. Nobody gives a shit about LGBT people at all. So there's not even much I can do even in terms of transitioning here. So yeah, I don't know. I just would appreciate any amount of support you can give me, be it monetarily or in any way otherwise. And this is not about boosting my channel or anything, or guilt tripping you with my sob story. I just wanted to get this off my chest and make my subscribers aware of the situation that I am in, and that I would appreciate anything that you guys can help me out with. It would mean literally everything. Like, for example, a friend that I made after starting this YouTube channel
my good friend Yuri, has been helping me out a lot. And I genuinely might have not been here if it wasn't for him showing up and befriending me. So yeah, this just went a little bit longer than I intended, but I would just really appreciate anything you can support me with. That's kind of ultimately what I'm trying to say.
And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, please leave a like, subscribe. Also, check out the links in the description to my Twitter if you want to follow me over there, and to my Wattpad where I post my stories, because in addition to doing all these videos on my channel, I'm also a writer. And if you don't enjoy my stories, or you simply enjoy my videos, you can head over to my Patreon or to my Ko-fi account, where you can pledge support and help get the channel going, help support me so I can keep writing the stories you enjoy. But if you don't want to do it, that's completely fine. You can still help me out in other ways, like liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and especially sharing this video with somebody who you think might enjoy it. And I think it's pretty much it for this video, so hopefully I'm gonna see you in the next one. Bye!